Hello, and welcome to the Restoration and the Glorious Revolution that happens in England. So, how did we get here? Remember, in 1658, Cromwell died. So we went back, the English fought a revolution, removed the king, and then what happens, what the English do is they realize that they do not want to be ruled by the Puritans anymore. The Puritans had messed everything up. No Christmas was one of the things. They closed the theaters. English people had had enough because remember the Puritans were the main support in Parliament. So what ends up happening, 1658, Cromwell dies. The English go in and get this guy, Charles I. Please remember that as we talked about, he is a Stuart monarch. Remember, the Stuarts are the house of Mary, Queen of Scots. And she was the one who was beheaded by Elizabeth. So you're back to the Stuart dynasty, which they fought to get rid of. Now, there are a couple problems. Charles will not leave an heir. So that is going to be a huge problem. So what you're going to get is you're going to get the Stuart monarch and you're going to get Charles II. Now, the English are very happy during the Restoration. The Stuarts are returned. Charles II, this guy here, Charles II, he is known as the Merry Monarch. Remember, he's merry. He has 20 children. None of them are eligible for the throne. He's not going to leave an heir, which is going to cause a little bit of problems later on. Now, one of the things, Charles II, he is of Charles I. Remember, Charles I is the one who was beheaded when Oliver Cromwell comes to power. Charles II is the smart son. He was over in France. The English come over and they pick him as king. They say, we'd like you to come back and rule. He did not want to rule make the same mistakes his father made. So one of the things is, he is, because you have to remember, Charles I's wife was Catholic. So her sons were exposed to the Catholic faith. There are some historians who believe that Charles II was secretly Catholic. He's not going to show Parliament this because we know from Mary Tudor, after that, the nickname Bloody Mary, the English really don't trust Catholicism. Remember, that was one of the issues, how much Catholicism was in the Anglican Church. That was one of the issues in the Revolution, in the English Civil War. So, and one of the things that Charles II is going to do is he's going to agree to the Petition of Right. He will accept that. Remember, that's the document and I'm sorry for my pen clicking. Remember, his father agreed to that but didn't rule. And those were things like no forced quartering of soldiers, limiting, forcing Parliament to be called, just minor limits on the king's power. So Charles comes to the throne and things are going well. The only problem is remember, the Merry Monarch. He's merry, all right, but he doesn't produce an heir. The next in line is James. Now, a couple things. James, he is Charles's brother. James, remember, is the brother. He is the brother of Charles II. So he is next in line since Charles has no children. So James is openly Catholic, which the English do not want. But the one advantage is James, when he grew up, like Charles, he grew up Protestant. He eventually converts, but he has a marriage before he converts, and that marriage produces a daughter, Mary. It actually produces two children, Mary and Anne, but Mary is our first one that is important. So James's daughter, Mary, is Protestant. So they have this idea when Charles dies, do we take James, and then when James dies, Mary becomes the queen, and then we'll get our Protestant? Parliament, and folks, remember Parliament, if you don't know this, lawmaking body, they are the ones who are gaining power, is split. Should we offer the throne to James or Mary for the succession? There are two groups in Parliament, Whigs, which might sound familiar to some of you who had U.S. history, and Tories. The Tories are your nobles, your aristocracy. Your Whigs are more of your upper middle class. Remember, even though we are going to have voting, it's a very, very small percentage, property owners basically. So the Tories say, give it to James, put no more conditions on him, everything will be fine. The Whigs say, fine, if you want James, we'll let you give it to the Catholic, but you're going to give us this thing called habeas corpus, which if you've been doing your vocabulary, you know that habeas corpus we even have in this country. This is going to be something that we bring to the shores of America, and this is going to be one of the causes of the American Revolution. And habeas corpus, remember, is you have to be brought before a judge when you're arrested so you know why you're being arrested and if there's enough evidence. So Charles tried to have unlimited power, Charles I. Then you have Charles II. Well, Charles II, remember, had the Petition of Right. Now James II, Catholic, has his power further limited because he has the Petition of Right that he has to agree to, and now he has this habeas corpus. And what this habeas corpus is, when you are arrested, you are brought before a judge, and the judge looks at the evidence and says, yes, there is enough evidence for trial. It's not that he doesn't determine guilt or innocence. Did they have enough reason to arrest you? And we still have that in this country today. So what happens is James is a disaster. I mean, of the two children that Charles I had, Charles II was the smart one. He was older, he saw the mistakes his father made, he was determined not to make those mistakes. Mary Monarch, everybody loved him. James already has a strike against him, he's Catholic. Then what comes in is he decides he wants to be an absolute monarch. He wants to rule the way that his father was supposed to rule. There is a law, Parliament passed a law, and they said no Catholics in high offices. James, of course, is a Catholic. He has Catholic friends. What does he do? He appoints them to high office. James tries to dissolve Parliament. Well, if you look at the Petition of Right, that was one of the first things. We determine, not the king. But they're like, we can wait him out, we can wait him out, we can wait him out. But then James does something else. James had a legitimate marriage, and he had a son. And now all of a sudden your Protestant succession is done. This son angers Parliament because now you're going to have a Catholic monarchy in a Protestant country. At this point, they're like, because the son, no matter that Mary was, a grown adult woman at this time and you just have a baby, if James dies, the next king of England will be Catholic. So Parliament says, that's it. They go to Mary and they ask her, she's married to William of Orange in the Netherlands, to invade England. Well, James finally smartens up because he tries to raise an army and no one will support him. So he's like, I'm getting out of this country. So as a result, you're going to get the new monarchs, William and Mary, which should sound like very familiar if you go to Virginia because the College of William and Mary is named for them. William was the king of the Netherlands. The way that it works is Mary is the legitimate heir. William and Mary will rule as joint monarchs. Also, they don't have children because there is some speculation about their relationship. Ask me in class. So, William, even though Mary dies first, William will stay, but the important thing is they are joint monarchs and their power is limited. So one of the things, Parliament does not make the same mistakes that they've made. William and Mary, they offer the throne, they tell them to invade. James does the smartest thing he could, he runs away. So what they make William and Mary sign is the English Bill of Rights, which is going to limit the power of the monarch, and it's going to make England a constitutional monarchy. And that is where this becomes, I mean, our Bill of Rights is modeled on this, and we'll be talking about the Bill of Rights and some of the things that it did. But the important thing is it limits the royal or the monarch's power, and England at this point is now a constitutional monarch ruling with Parliament. And I would make that annotation that they rule with Parliament, even though there's not a notation, you should do that. Here's the interesting thing. Remember, we have two separate countries. In 1707, though, you're going to finally, under Mary's sister Anne, when William and Mary die, the next in line is Mary's sister Anne, and then you will move it, they will be then you'll eventually go through the Georges. Yes, Mrs. Keating can name all the English kings from Richard III to present. It's a sickness. So in 1707, you have the Act of Union, which creates the United Kingdom, which is Scotland and England becoming one country, which they are still united today. And in 2014, they even had a vote to maybe disunify, but they are. So at that point, you are going to have one country, the United Kingdom.